We'd like to welcome everybody to the forum this morning. We appreciate you coming out in this weather. I know some of you came from the Northeast, some came from Brown Deer. You came from all over, so thank you so much for coming. And again, welcome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good morning again. My name is Matthew Mixon, and I'm a member of Souls to the Polls Wisconsin, and also a member of League of Progressive Seniors. So I'm going to fall to my script right now because I don't memorize anything. In the upcoming general election for Milwaukee City Attorney, the incumbent, Tearman Spencer, and challenger Wisconsin State Assemblyman Evan Goyke are both running for the general election of Milwaukee for the city attorney position. As you know, that election is on April 2nd. The critical role of city attorney in Milwaukee was established way back in 1846. I had not known that. 1846. The city attorney serves as the legal cornerstone that safeguards the city's interests across various domains. Those domains include employment, labor, benefits, and contracting, real estate, education, and housing, litigation, and neighborhood revitalization and ordinance enforcement. Now, from representing the Milwaukee Board of School Directors to the Neighborhood Improvement Development Corporation, the city attorney's scope of responsibility encompasses the major entities that shape our community. At its core, the Office of the City Attorney operates as a legal hub, as they oversee the tasks that are mandated by the city charter. And that includes litigation and legal advice. So here we go. For the upcoming election, it's crucial for us as citizens to scrutinize the vision, qualifications, and the platforms of each candidate vying for the position of Milwaukee City Attorney. So I'm going to introduce Tearman Spencer after I talk about him a little bit. Tearman Spencer, who goes by Spencer, is the current Milwaukee City Attorney. He's a product of Milwaukee. He was born and raised here, and he's a proud alumnus of Rufus King High School. He studied public safety, engineering, safety operations, real estate, and municipal government. And in the past, Spencer has managed the OSHA program for the state of Wisconsin. His engineering expertise was put to use when working extensively on infrastructure projects throughout the country. He managed safety efforts regarding the building of tunnels, bridges, high-rises, airports, and other systems. And his legal experience includes managing a civil practice for over 20 years. Which included personal injury, municipal law, and over 40 years experience in the area of real estate in Wisconsin. He has a master's degree in business administration with a concentration on operations management from Golden State University, and he earned his Bachelor of Science degree at the University of Southern California. He graduated from the UW-Madison Law School with a Juris Doctorate concentrating on labor and employment law. So, Mr. Spencer.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to speak so that the back of the room can hear as well. I want to go over just a little bit more about my background. You heard the education. My legal background was at UW Law School. Emphasis in labor and employment law. And that's very important to understand because we have a division of employment and labor. Also, I spent well over 40 years in real estate and real estate development, primarily here in Milwaukee. So I understand real estate. I've worked throughout the country developing infrastructure, whether airports, tunnels, bridges, dams, high-rises, and the like. I understand construction. Not only do I understand construction, I know what it takes to get that done. I know what it takes from the aspect of having folks do the job, meaning dealing with the trades and getting things done. And primarily with my education from the University of Southern California as a system safety engineer, my primary focus was on interfacing systems, whether it be a HVAC system, air system, a steel infrastructure, your concrete system, so that that interface and that design is designed such that if there's any kind of incident that would occur, catastrophic or the like, if there was going to be failure, it'll have to fail in a safe mode. And you have to understand how important that is, because anytime we have accidents, or anytime we have loss of life, and whatever we do in our city, that's a cost associated with it. And we have to make sure we manage those costs if we cannot get rid of them. But the idea is to design them out. And my perspective is we can, for the most part, design them out. Now, my whole experience from working has been so that we can move forward in a costly manner where it doesn't cost the city as we develop as much to continue to move forward in progress. Because you understand, if we have these costs that we have to bear, who have to pay for that? That become us. And so the whole idea is to minimize that. And the way we minimize that is taking a systematic approach to how we operate. And when we operate, we need to understand what it is to manage, interface. That's very key. And if you don't have that key component, you're flying by the seat of your pants trying to get it done. You have to get an understanding, basic understanding. And if we're going to work inside the city, if we're going to do anything, I think it's very important to have an understanding of how it operates. We cannot factor out or design out problems or deal with them in a proactive manner if we don't have a clear understanding of the causation. So I think my education have allowed me to interface in all of the divisions that is in the city attorney's office. And as we speak about the city attorney's office, from the employment and labor division, my concentration in law school was employment and labor law. When we talk about the division of real estate, education, and housing, I have well over 40 years of developing here in this city and being involved in real estate and concentrating on saving. So I think I come to the job well prepared to deal with those issues. You know, and we have a neighborhood revitalization and ordinance where we come in and we prosecute violators for speeding and et cetera. I'd say if there's a weakness in my education and my experience, will be there. I don't have a lot of experience getting speeding tickets, nor do I have a lot of experience prosecuting those who do. So, but I think I've been around long enough to understand and have competent people that work with me to get that job done. Now, what I think is the bread and butter of what we do is our operations and litigation. Litigation and risk management. That is where our city bore most of the costs from our exposures. So we have different departments that expose us. We talk about the police department. Their everyday encounters with trying to control the crime, it puts us at a risk. And I'd say we're well over 50% of our costs when we come to payout is trying to manage the crime in the city, trying to keep order in the city. And so it's very important to understand how to articulate back to police. We don't run them. We don't promulgate the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, but we can look at the behavior and analyze it. And unfortunately, we do not have extensive amount of money to have a risk management department so that we can do it in depth. And even if we did, it's still left up to police department and FPC to kind of regulate that behavior. But I'll tell you the biggest cost that we endure comes from their interactions with the public. But what I can tell you unequivocally, when I took this job, I had a different perspective on how we would approach the interactions with our citizens, I know it's a balancing act always, and it encounters with qualified immunity, and I don't want to get so in depth in qualified immunity, but with respect to qualified immunity, it gives a mindset. Some folks think they can go do whatever they want to and be absolved of their actions. So we had to bring that back and let them know you will be accountable for your actions. And I'm here to tell you, since that policy change, unofficial, has been announced, we've been in office, we have not had not one loss of life with police encounters with citizens of Milwaukee. Now, I will tell you, prior to that, we have had one or two every year. But just a fundamental shift in a mentality and philosophy on how we deal with that, making people more aware of their operations, have saved the city a tremendous amount of money, loss of life, how we view and approach our jobs. And I say that from the police perspective. It's very important to understand that. So someone would say, oh, well, no, you can't take credit for that. You know, the prior chief can, etc. I'm here to beg to differ. A simple philosophical shift in mindset on how we do the work can get us where we need to be. And understand, we have to always support our police vigorously, but there's got to be a kind of a balance when we deal with this other element. It's never an easy thing, but when you wake up in the morning trying to focus on having a good day, doing your job, and try to limit some of the encounters, you see the change, you see the difference. So we could take the statistics, take a look at that, and take a look at a whole lot of different things. So primarily, since I've been in office, there's been a fundamental shift. So you guys understand, I won, we had a city attorney that was there 37 years at the hand. And when I took over, it was not met without resistance. A matter of fact, there was a mass exodus. And even those who stayed, most of them, reluctantly at me at the helm. But we had to continue to move forward with a new agenda to make sure that we protect our city. As such, we're trying to redesign who's in the office. Make that office more reflective of the city that we live in. And we have a lot of diverse people in our city. And my efforts have been to get qualified, diverse lawyers to represent us, competent. And don't get me wrong, we have some brilliant lawyers in that office, brilliant. And so what we're trying to do is establish a way that we maximize the utilization of their brilliance so that we can, in turn, make that change in our city. And we're working there. And I like to say we're accomplishing that, and we're getting there. And unfortunately, there's always going to be bad apples who don't want to change. And every opportunity there, they will try to undercut what I'm trying to move forward, for whatever reason. Now, granted, they're entitled to have their own opinion, but I challenge anyone to compare their education and their experience to mine for this job. I don't think there could be a better person suited to do this. When we have more infrastructure that we deal with, I have the experience. In every area that we have to encounter, I have the experience and education. We have a trolley system that we have there, people mover. Christ. I design, and when I say I design, I'm telling you, I designed the light rail system from Long Beach to LA. And I had an integral part of building that. And the facts are there. My first job coming out of college was a design engineer, system safety. My first job was at Long Beach lab. And I will tell you there was a piece of humor to go along with that. When the first car that came, well, part of the design, a train car come, and we had to test it on the line. But the ergonomic design of it was for the 95th percentile Asian. so no Americans can get into the cockpit to drive the train. So that was something we laughed about for the longest. Now I'll tell you that was not my era. There was an era in configuration management who forgot to put one little notation there, Americans specs. But we moved forward. I think it's very important that we work together to accomplish what we need to get accomplished in our office. I'm striving to get people that will work together and make that environment like that. Unfortunately, we have some folks that are disgruntled, that are not going to change, that are looking for other jobs, and you know, I hope they're able to find them, and they're not. But if there's any question that you have about my experience, my background, or my education that I feel suits me for this job and prepares me. And I think from those who are there, I'm a better prepared candidate because I have all of the integral parts it takes to run an office, to understand the needs, risk management and the like, and legal, so we can merge and get this thing done at a cost saving to us. Thank you for allowing me to address you.
Spencer.
Yes, sir.
The audience does have a few questions for you, but I'm going to lead off with one question.
Sure.
What has been the most gratifying legal battle you have ever waged?
The most gratifying legal battle. Wow, that's a really loaded question. Now, this may not seem to be as important to most of us sitting here, but I had a couple come to me. That had experienced damage to their home. A branch broke in it, and they had complained to the city about it on numerous occasions. And their complaints fell on deaf ears. They took the bus to come to my office to see me, had no transportation. And they said that they had spoken with everybody in every department. No one would give them an audience to listen to them, more or less deal with their problems. After having them to the office, we had that resolved. Because it's simple communications. They've done all that they could do. It's just that there was a disconnect. And I think of all the things, being able to help a couple that could not help themselves, that was retired, was most gratifying for me.
The first question, I've not had a chance to read these yet, so excuse me if I stumble around here. This is for you, sir.
Yes.
In your remarks, you spoke about saving the city money, yet there was recently a settlement where the city had to pay a $77,000 settlement. What is your comment?
We had a Seville Smith case that the city settled for $4 million. Now, the fact pattern on that case, and opposing counsel was asking for $12 million. After having the experts look at the facts and weigh in, it was concluded, had we taken that to court, we would have been facing more than that. We were right in the middle of the death and the riots, and the tensions were very high. So there was a settlement much more than that just recently came down. So to settle for $4 million, they were asking for 12, and it was highly probable that they were going to get that 12 plus. I think it was a very good settlement that we could save the city in excess of $8 million. And this isn't something that I'm just pontificating. This is something that we had some of the leading judges weigh in on, who have been on the bench making these kind of settlements. So, in turn, yes, we talk about $77,000. I cannot control what happens with police or whatever. But what I can do is, in negotiation, try to bring that down. So, we're going to always have exposure, and we have a great deal of exposure. Sometimes capping the $250,000 limit. Sometimes the fact pattern does not allow us to bring it lower. You know, so we have to do it because it's blatantly clear whose fault it is. Now, if we have something to work with to argue, then we can, to fight to try to bring it down. But when it's there, it's there.
Okay. Sir, your office has gotten some bad press, a mass exodus of staff members, etc. How has that been dealt with as you as the leader?
So let's call a spade a spade. And unfortunately, when we come in, there's always a dark cloud. Milwaukee has always had a dark cloud. So when I beat my incumbent, who's been there 37 years, folks was excellent prior to me getting there. I don't want to use the word racism, but there's no other way to explain it. You can't get around it. You cannot get around it. So if we had folks that will accept you on the merits of what you do and who you are, we will have a better environment. Unfortunately, we don't. So for various reasons, we have to deal with that. And unfortunately, some of those that was able to exit, exited. But then we have a number of attorneys that want out, they can't get out. So what they're going to do is stay into the office and do these undercurrent things as long as they can to create havoc in the office. But what I can say is, as we hire new attorneys with new attitudes, they don't have that old baggage that some of the other attorneys bring. And with that, I have hope and promise that we will have an environment free of that racist overtone that we have. It's shaded as different kind of ways. Oh, he's not skilled with this or that. But when we look at it, and when we look at the facts, there's an undeniability that that's not the case. So we can see it. I don't want to rest my hat on it. I believe that we continue to move forward, get the best lawyers that we can, that are untainted, and move forward for the betterment of our city and continue to get the job done.
Thank you. The biggest issue in state-city relationships, what do you think that is? And what would you do to address it?
In what relationship?
The relationship between the city and the state.
Well, there's a number of issues between the city and state. And we understand that we do not get our fair share of what's due to the city. But now, what would I do to address it? I think we have our hands full trying to address the issues that we deal with in the city. So we need to have more outreach to go to the state. But more important is we need to be able to control what goes on in this city. Because this city is in dire need. And when I say in dire need, we're at the cups of being bankrupt. How do you deal with that? And I'm going to tell you, in my estimation, one of the real problems is having unqualified people in positions of decisions. We continue to dig a hole and dig a deeper hole. You look at a face and say, oh, that's a good-looking face. Oh, he's got a charming personality with his policy, but he's not competent to make the decisions that need to be made. Ergo, we end up getting more and more in the deficit because the illogical decisions made by the unprepared. And those of you who are here with your expertise know if you're not qualified to make a decision from where you sit, your perch, you should not be on it. And if you're going to be given a budget to make decisions, well, you should have an understanding of what that budget entails. Not just having smart people around you, because sometimes you have to make decisions. And my contention is we have a lot of folks making a lot of decisions that are not skilled to make them. So now back to your question, what we do with the state, we need to clean up our own backyard. And as we do that, we should do more outreach to the state to see that we can get our fair share of revenue to aid us in what we need to do here locally.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Spencer,
Yes.
There was a report that you approached a judge on an ex parte basis to criticize the work of one of your assistant city attorneys. What is your explanation about that?
That is blatantly untrue, unequivocally. When we get past this, we will address that again. What I did was I approached the judge. The judge made a decision, supposedly, and saying that she thought folks should be informed. Now, I wanted to commend her for her decision, even though it was wrong, but the fact that she stood up for it. So now here is a case. Now, I control it. I can say, look, no, we're going to end this, we're not going to fight this. So why would I go to a judge to try to influence them when the control was in my hands? Not there. I went over there. The judge's name was Chavez, or a Hispanic name, Perez, and I wanted to just congratulate her for standing up for what she believed in. I didn't want to talk about the merits of the case, just, you know, continue to stand up for what you believe in. Whether it's right or wrong, but stand up for it. Because we don't have change if you don't stand up. That's the fact of what transpired.
Thank you. The next question. How many cases are you pursuing for neighborhood improvement? Please describe them.
How many cases for neighborhood improvement? There's a number of them, and I can't go down the list and tell you how many there are. But we have a lot of issues that come in. And we have a lot of issues that we have to deal with that really isn't open to the public for discussion. I mean, that deals with how we administer, or neighborhood services administer their enforcement. There have been a lot of issues about how that's not being balanced. So we have to deal with that. And when we deal with that, we talk about dealing with and improving other neighborhoods. That's bifurcated from one end, but there's a whole lot of other factors that go in. Until we, as a city, decide not to label a neighborhood as a depressed environment to reduce the value of that neighborhood, then we will have different changes. But as long as that's our approach, we allow predators to come in, to take advantage of the properties, the prices of the properties, and to exacerbate the existing problems.
Okay, thank you. And we have one last question
Sure.
for you. What role do you think your office should play in corporate litigation?
As corporate interface with our city, my office should have a vital role. We are the chief legal office for the city. You know, so if there's a corporate issue, we need to be there. Who are you going to hire? I mean, if we have the expertise, we need to have a seat at the table. You know, and if we don't have the expertise, we still need to have a seat at the table while we hire the expertise to make sure as we move forward, our folks are trained and skilled to deal with those issues when they come up again in the future. So my question is, we need a seat at the table in order to deal with those issues and to make them better. And if we don't have the expertise in-house to deal with it, then we need to work side by side with the expertise that we hire until we get to a point where our lawyers are skilled to handle it separately.
Okay.
So we try, and I feel very good that we're...
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like now to introduce Evan Goyke. Evan was born and raised in Wisconsin, and he attended Marquette University Law School. During law school, Evan participated in the Milwaukee Street Law program, where he taught high school students at Tenor High School, and he completed a year-long internship with the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office. Following his graduation, Evan worked as an adjunct professor of law at Marquette, and he was hired as an attorney with the Wisconsin State Public Defenders. In 2012, Evan was elected to the Wisconsin State Assembly, and he continues to serve in that role. Representing the 18th Assembly District, which includes neighborhoods on Milwaukee's north and west sides, as well as parts of Wauwatosa, Evan serves as the senior Assembly Democrat on the legislature's Joint Committee on Finance. He has also served on the Judiciary Committee and the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. Now, during his tenure in the legislature, Evan successfully worked across the aisle to pass legislation benefiting Milwaukee. These properties exploited a loophole. There were properties that exploited a loophole in state law, and too frequently they became magnets for criminal activity. Passing the state legislation against that has empowered residents, alderpersons, and the city of Milwaukee to hold property owners accountable and to improve the quality of life and reduce crime. Evan built a bipartisan coalition of legislators to address bad landlords and the quality of life issues around them. Working with the city attorney's office, Evan authored legislation to prevent landlords that haven't paid their taxes or fixed up their properties from acquiring new properties at sheriff's sales, where a number of known bad landlords were gaming the system. Exposed by investigative journalists, Evan helped stop this by working with rural Republican legislators, the city of Milwaukee, and a number of stakeholders to craft the solution. One of Evan's most important legislative achievements has been leading the effort to modernize juvenile justice in Wisconsin. Evan and his wife Gabriella, or otherwise Gabby, live on Milwaukee's near west side. Evan Goyke.
I want to go back in time and tell you the moments in which I fell in love with the Milwaukee City Attorney's Office. And legislation was referenced in my introduction regarding a property in my neighborhood that we worked to close down, and I just want to tell you a little bit about it. On the corner of 27th and Kilbourne, there was former Judy's Red Hot dog stand. That was no longer a hot dog stand. It was empty for several years, and then a business bought the corner lot and opened up a tobacco store. That's all they sold were tobacco products, cigars, vaping, etc. And that property and the way it was managed became an opportunity for criminal activity. In the parking lot, in the stores, drugs, guns, prostitution. And our neighbors in and around that area were very concerned and worked to bring some accountability. And neighborhood meeting after neighborhood meeting, in rooms kind of like this, you've probably all been to those meetings, we had assistant city attorneys working in the neighborhood revitalization and code enforcement division, brainstorming with us about what existing legal tools the city had to hold this business accountable. And I went to those meetings as a resident and a local elected official, and I watched the assistant city attorneys, and I thought, I like what they're doing. This is why I went to law school. They're talking to people. They are creatively trying to problem solve. And they tried to hold this property owner accountable in our current legal system at the time. And there was a loophole. The tobacco industry had written a law that treated a tobacco business uniquely. If that business sold potato chips or beer, they would have to come in front of the Common Council and they could have their license revoked for the ongoing criminal activity on their property. But not the case for a tobacco store. And it was the assistant city attorneys that found that loophole because they were litigating, they were trying to hold, that wasn't my idea, it was theirs. And I just took the ball from them, and they walked the roughly 2 years it took to get that bill signed into law. And was mentioned in the bio as well. We liked that relationship. I liked working with the lawyers in the city attorney's office. So I told them the next legislative session, what else you got? And we had identified this problem of known slumlords that are back on their taxes and have outstanding building code violations, buying properties cheaply in the basement of the courthouse through sheriff's sale. And this was the game they would play. They'd buy 3 or 4 properties a year, $10,000, $15,000 cash, and they'd lose 3 or 4 properties a year through tax foreclosure because they weren't paying their taxes. But in that process, they were cash flowing. They were making money and preying upon our most vulnerable and marginalized residents. And so worked with the former deputy city attorney to craft this legislation. And a question was asked of Mr. Spencer, the city and state relationship. And these are really good examples of how the city attorney's office can lead the city's policy agenda. Not the only voice. That's really for the mayor and the city council. But the city attorneys often are the front line, the boots on the ground that see and experience shortcomings in state law. And that's exactly these 2 examples. And it was, without the city attorney's office, we probably wouldn't have really been able to work on the corner of 27th and Kilbourne. That business is gone. Penfield's Children's Center now has that property and uses it for their campus. And we wouldn't have discovered and worked on that landlord issue. And I'll tell you, the issue of housing and housing quality in our city is so important to me. And it's really the most central reason why I'm running for this office. I was walking, my son is about to turn 3. So about 2 years ago, on a day very different like this, a nice summer day, we were walking in the neighborhood just north of where we live, Cold Spring Park. And we were on a little side street, 31st or 32nd or 33rd, between McKinley and Juneau. 5, 6 houses in a row, all duplexes, all falling apart. Whether it's roof shingles or windows or porch railings, the housing conditions were clearly not up to standard. And then in the yards and on the porches were toys and bikes and the evidence of families living in those properties. And the true reality in our city is that many people are paying 30, 40, 50% of the income that they earn to live in housing that is substandard. And I had this moment, we're walking on this side street, I'm talking to my wife, and I tell her, I want to do something about this. I don't accept the conditions in which too many of our neighbors live. And the way that these property owners, many of whom are hidden behind layers of LLCs and corporate camouflage, or their equity funds in Delaware or on either coast and have no real business here. And I told my wife, I want to run for city attorney. And after I made that decision, and I didn't announce yet, I really started looking at the office. I had the opportunity to sit down and learn from some of the long retired members of the office, former deputies, Mr. Langley himself, and they provided incredibly valuable guidance and wisdom about the importance of the office. The office has massive responsibility. There are 52 different areas of legal representation that we provide to the city of Milwaukee. I describe it on the campaign trail as an octopus with tentacles that reach out into every different department or commission or board. It's a big job. It's an important job. I want to talk a little bit about my priorities when I'm elected. The first priority is public safety. And there are multiple approaches to public safety. There is no one silver bullet or magic policy that we can enact that will make our city safer. There are many that we have to endeavor to take on. But the city attorney's office is the prosecutor in municipal court. The lawyers in the office, staff, the 3 branches of municipal court, and the vast majority of driving citations, reckless driving, speeding, etc., are municipal citations that go to municipal court. If you were to get a ticket today, your court date would be 2, 3, or 4 months down the road. And I want to take a real hard look at whether what we're doing in municipal court is working or not. And I want to do that through the lens of combating reckless driving. You all know it. If you're here in the city, you've experienced it. It is prevalent in every neighborhood, and it will be a focus to work to reduce reckless driving. We've done good work in Madison. We're restoring driver's education in schools. That's part of it. The mayor and the Department of Public Works are making the streets, reducing speeds. That's part of it. But so too is municipal court and the prosecution of the violations. But there's a second side to that coin that I want to talk about for a minute. Municipal court is also where suspensions originate. And we're overly punitive to some people that lose their license for failure to pay. And we almost create a cycle that is making reckless drivers, because they'll lose their license and they'll lose their job, and the downward spiral of being entrapped in the system. So we really need to look at, are we being strong enough against those that have repeatedly violated and recklessly driven on our streets? And at the same point, are we overly punitive to people that do not have that type of record but are losing their livelihood because we're taking their license away? Public safety in the conversation about housing, housing is intimately connected with public safety. And Milwaukee is a patchwork of neighborhoods. We have this beautiful mosaic, a quilt work of neighborhoods, each very different, with different needs and challenges and solutions to those challenges. So my priority with public safety and housing is to listen to residents and to meet them where they live, in their neighborhoods, to walk with them, to look at those properties that they are calling their aldermen or calling the city about. There was a time in which the city attorney's office staffed a program called the Community Prosecution Unit. Assistant city attorneys were in police districts in the community, and I want to restore that. Now, we can't do that until we're meeting our obligations in court and things, you know, the trains are running on time. Is that my bell to stop talking?
No, okay. You're good.
The third priority that I want to talk about is that in 2024 there are two things that we need to be, that the city attorney office needs to be amply prepared for. The first is the Republican National Convention, and the second is the November election. And both of those involve, I am not worried about Milwaukee and Milwaukeeans in either of those. I think we will run a good convention and keep the peace. I know that we will run a fair and open and well-run election. But in both cases, there is a likelihood of outside agitators, well-funded organizations that are ideologically motivated to cause havoc in our community. And so the RNC presents major First Amendment issues, and being on the front lines and prepared, working with the police department and city leaders and community organizations, that we're going to have protests and counter-protests and counter-protests, and how that is all handled, the eyes of the world will be on us. And our office is going to take that challenge very seriously. And then so too with the November election. The city attorney's office provides counsel to the elections commission. We have talented, experienced election lawyers in the office now, but we need to make sure that they have the ability to focus solely on the election in the lead up and aftermath to that. And that my office will be totally committed to the defense of the city and our election process. We saw what happened 4 years ago with election deniers and, you know, legal challenges across the country. We will be ready to take those on head on and defend our election when the former president loses again. You know, I agree with some of the things that Mr. Spencer said. He's right. The office's major job is risk mitigation. That's a lawyer's job. That's a quintessential training to become a lawyer or to be a member of a law firm. The city of Milwaukee is self-insured. So when we pay claims, that is a line item in our budget. That is, you know, property tax revenue that could go to some other needed program or expense. So the primary role is risk mitigation. I'm trying to do the umbrella. All right, yeah, I'm going to try to do the umbrella. So the first, and that is the basic core idea of a law firm is risk mitigation. I am confident that we, when elected, that, oh, excuse me, no, you're okay, you're okay, that we will put in place very experienced lawyers, and that we will rebuild the culture in the office that I think has been lost over the last 3.5 years. I want it to become a place where people are excited to get up and come to work. I operate, how I manage my current office, how I work is I'm an open book. First one in, last one out. My little son Miguel is going to be running around the office. I'm an open book. I want to invite my team members to my home and vice versa. I operate much like a family. I think we'll build that type of culture in the office, and it'll be a place where the best lawyers in Milwaukee are asking to come in, and we're not going to recruit. They want to come and be a part of the team. On the umbrella, the second piece is public safety, and I talked a little bit about that in the context of reckless driving and housing quality. I am excited to get to work at the street level with the alderpersons, the police captains. I was called by an alderman 2 weeks ago, and they were having trouble getting an answer from the city attorney's office about how the police department should respond to a public safety issue in that police district. And those calls are so important and must be answered. And we can't kid ourselves about what the #1 issue in this city is right now, and that is public safety. The third is really looking forward, and that is economic development. And part of what the City Attorney's Office does, we work with an entity called the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Milwaukee. And that's an entity that often takes on properties that have been abandoned or they may be environmentally contaminated. And if you go to, many of our neighborhoods have railroads, or they're near a river or a freeway, they have old industrial parcels that are sitting empty. You think of the 30th Street Industrial Corridor, the old A.O. Smith site, Northridge Mall, which is going to get torn down in the near future. What are we going to do with those properties? Will we rebuild them and return thousands of jobs to the city of Milwaukee, or will they languish and be empty and stay empty? And the city attorney is an important part, not the only part, but an important part of fixing the contamination, making them clean enough to be redeveloped, and then making sure that that redevelopment is something that the community wants, and that puts our city in the most positive position moving forward. The mayor talks about growth. He puts out a big number, 1 million people in Milwaukee. We may get there one day, but a lot of that, of achieving that, will involve the city attorney's office in how we build housing and how we reclaim these abandoned industrial properties, how we clean up the soil and the water and the air in those neighborhoods and make them redevelopable. So I'm happy to sit on the high chair and answer some questions. The office is incredibly important. It has the power to do incredible good, and I think I'm the candidate to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments?
Okay, first of all, what state issue would you want work on beyond increasing state revenue, beyond reckless driving or housing?
Well, I want to talk about one thing that happened at the end of the legislative session, and it involves housing, but it involves other properties as well. The city attorney issues, we bring tax foreclosure cases against property owners when they don't pay their taxes. And there was a Supreme Court decision, Tyler versus Hennepin County from 2022, that will change how that system operates in Milwaukee. And then a state law to codify that decision, but there's a really big change in how the city handles these properties and how they must sell them after we obtain title through tax foreclosure. I think that law needs to be changed. I was against it. I tried to get the governor to veto it. It sets up a very complex framework for us to handle those properties, and I think that framework was done at the 11th hour and will cause a lot of problems. Beyond housing and traffic and revenue, I think that this city, and this is a political answer, my personal opinion, not the city attorney does not directly involved, but we have such an outdated transit system that is so far behind metros of our size, and we've seen the reduction of bus routes and accessibility in neighborhoods, and it's so hard for individuals that to get to where they work, to get to a place where they can work a real career job. And so that's been something that's bugged me for my entire time in the legislature that needs to be addressed. And that's a city-county partnership with the state.
I don't know, is this repetitive of what you just said? What role will you play in corporate litigation?
No, I think there are lawsuits, and often these are national lawsuits that seek to add plaintiffs, and sometimes the plaintiffs are municipalities or school districts. There's a national lawsuit against Juul. Juul is J-U-U-L. It's a company that makes and sells vape products. And so there's litigation about marketing those products to young people. I think there's some litigation being anticipated about social media and targeting kids and the impacts of social media and bullying on social media. There are environmental lawsuits that deal with polluters or with carbon emissions and global warming, and so there are opportunities where the city can join in that litigation. Sometimes, we are the tip of the spear, and sometimes we're part of the plaintiff's class looking for this larger national settlement. It's important. The door will be open to those opportunities. these are social justice issues. You just think of the things that I just talked about, vaping, social media, environmental contamination. I mean, these are challenges of our day that we must meet, and certainly we won't shy away from joining that litigation.
You are a great liaison to the legislature and the city attorney. If you win, who will be the champion? How will you and the office be protective on that relationship?
On the relationship between the city attorney and the legislature?
Yeah.
Well, the city attorney's office provides, there's a little bit of a structure behind the closed doors. The city council and the mayor both have staff members that are licensed lobbyists to work in Madison. Intergovernmental Relations is the department name. And often those lobbyists see what's happening in Madison, and then they ask for help, basically, opinions. What is the impact? And frequently, lawyers and the assistant city attorneys are the skilled, trained individuals that can provide the information necessary to the Office of Intergovernmental Relations, the mayor and the city council, to decide whether or not to take a position. Yes, that's good legislation for the city. No, that's bad. We need to change it. We will be meeting with them regularly. I mentioned this bill at the last minute about tax foreclosures. An assistant city attorney was really helping one of the city's the lobbyists, and was on the phone. I think we were talking to her at 9 at night saying, well, what about this and what about that? So we're really important to the city and how the city is positioned in Madison, and obviously I intend to use the knowledge and experience I've had over 11 years in the legislature to help equip the city being the most effective it can in the capital. The city of Milwaukee actually owns the school buildings, not MPS. And so there is a very close relationship. There's also a state law that was passed in 2014 or 15 that requires the building first to be marketed and sold to an education operator, a charter or voucher school, before it can be sold to any other operator. These are often very difficult buildings that are old and have lots of liabilities inside of them. Lead paint, asbestos, aging infrastructure like heating and cooling systems. So they're not easy properties to sell. And there are some interest groups out there that are opposing the MPS referendum, which I have supported publicly, that are arguing that before we go to referendum we should sell all the surplus buildings, and it's not that easy. Well, I want to give you an example in my neighborhood. There's a school it's called the Wisconsin Avenue School, and it's been empty for a long time, maybe 20 years. And I can't name names because it's not official and you'll read about it in a couple of months. But there is going to be an announcement of a partnership with the city, with neighborhoods, and with an operator that's going to come in, and they're going to build an incredibly valuable community asset there. And so what I want to do, and my focus on the MPS buildings, is not just sell them for selling's sake, not just try to grab the cash, but what is the long-term use of that building, and how does that long-term use benefit the neighborhood? What are the neighbors saying they want, and how can we steer the use of that building to meet that need? And let me tell you, as somebody raising a kid on 27th and State, the thing that's going to go in that building is so excited for me as a family member, as a young dad, and it helps us make our decision that that's the neighborhood that we want to live in forever.
Thank you. The city attorney has to manage a large firm of legal professionals. What, in your opinion, has prepared you to manage this group that goes off in 51 directions?
It will not be easy. I think I spoke earlier about my leadership style is to lead by example. I intend to walk in the shoes of all of the assistant city attorneys and support staff so that I have a good understanding of what they do on a daily basis. I will take traffic court assignment on Friday afternoon before the Christmas holiday. If that's what it takes, that I want to show my staff that I am not above any assignment or any job in the office. I have also opened up a very, I want to have them in the community. I want the assistants to understand, to see the neighborhoods. I want to do a lot of opportunities to get out of the municipal building and be in the community. I think getting out of the workplace is often where relationships are best fostered. I do think that 12 years of working in the legislature has well prepared me to handle people with disagreements and different opinions. It isn't easy, but it is really the task day one is the culture of the office and restoring it to this place where people just absolutely love to come to work.
What is the potential to reassert and establish the home rule doctrine in this state, including based on the recent budget compromise and some general redistricting in Milwaukee?
It's an interesting question. You know, you mentioned the city charter when you did the introduction of the panel. You know, we're older than the state. That was 1846, statehood was 1848, and so there's some home rule privileges that cities of our age, our vintage, have. My understanding is that the City Council, following the passage of Act 12, which was the sales tax legislation that changed how the city must operate in certain ways, have sought outside counsel. They budgeted for outside counsel to provide them a legal opinion whether there were grounds to pursue litigation. They are a client. If the client says we want to move forward with this litigation, we will take a look, we'll advise them, and ultimately, if that's in the best interest of the city of Milwaukee, then we'll go for it. Now, those provisions of Act 12 can also be undone. So what you mentioned, Marlene, in the final point is redistricting, which really won't touch the home rule that was in the first part of the question, but certainly a brighter day in Madison for Milwaukee is possible, and we could certainly undo what has been done with, you know, one swipe of the governor's pen.
What state issue would you work on beyond increasing state revenue, beyond reckless driving, or housing?
Yeah, I think you asked this question, and I answered it in probably a pretty confusing, roundabout way. But let me say this, we also don't know what's coming. We don't know what the next legislature will look like and what opportunities there are. And the question, I think it's too bad that it says beyond housing, because really this is a top priority. And there's ample bipartisan ground. So let's imagine that the legislature is very close to 50-50. I think we can get so much good work done on housing. And the need is so vast in this community. And there are tools that the city, especially financing tools, that the state, we need help with the state. We just simply don't have the cash to be able to make the type of impact. And if I could, it's not just building apartment buildings, it's about ownership and restoring ownership. There are neighborhoods in the city where, you know, home ownership rates are 20%, 30%, and the house comes up to market and it gets gobbled up right away by an out-of-state entity. There's really room to work with organizations like Axe Housing and Habitat to ensure that those opportunities go back to homeowners in the neighborhood.
Okay, one more question. This office has had a number of issues creating turmoil. What changes need to be made to end this?
Well, I talked about the task on day one is to restore a culture where people feel safe and comfortable and happy to come into work. And there are some really simple, practical things that you can do with that. I'll get into the weeds. The office has got half of floor 7 and half of floor 10 in the Zeidler Municipal Building. That was a move that happened before we ever even thought about city attorney, because the 8th floor of City Hall, where the office was, had some leak or some problem. Okay, well, 2 offices. The other half of both of those floors are the Department of Public Works. I want to trade. I don't care if it's 7 or 10, but I want everyone in the same place so they can see each other. So a new lawyer can take a file down the hall and talk to an experienced lawyer and say, hey, this just got filed. What do I do? How do I learn? And that mentorship, and that's what I'm talking about, the culture and restoring that, so that you have the fishbowl where everyone can eat together, they can talk together, and they can see each other. I've worked for the government. The Capitol's a beautiful office building. Zeidler could use some new furniture, maybe a coat of paint. These are professional people. Salaries are pretty good, but they're not competitive with what the private sector, you go to Quarles and Brady or Foley and Lardner. And so I want there to be dignity in the office. I want the lawyers to walk in and the support staff to walk in and feel like they're at a world-class law firm, as if they were 2 blocks away in a brand new big glass building. And we can really advocate for those changes.
Thank you, Mr. Goyke. Thank you.
Thank you so much.